everybody got the rest of their copies so they can sit there and look at my face? Well, I want to thank Noelle and her family for letting me share today. As you can probably see that there's some of us here who are red and we're part of George Simon's Bojangles gang. We've been meeting at the corner of Davis Drive and Highway 70 for 40 years. And the thought was that we made Bojangles what it is today. So the other thing that's really interesting is when Noelle sent out her note or text, she called George Big G. I don't know what you guys know, but I did not know George was called Big G. So what we decided to do was we said, well, maybe George has different identities or something like that. So what I did is we went online to figure out what George had some other things he was doing. And we all know that you can trust everything you read online, right? And so just to verify that I did not find Russian disinformation, I went and told one of my buddies to go to some trusted news sources. So Rachel Maddow and Tucker Carlson have confirmed that the following stories are actually true. Now, George would come in, we'd go into Bojangles, and I don't remember if George was first or second in line, but he would always sit down and he would grade his chicken tenders. He would say whether they were soft, moist, whether they were hard, whether they're hot or whether they're cold, and thinking like, okay, he did this every week. And the big thing for George is that when they made a mistake and he gave 4 chicken tenders instead of 3, that just made his day. And what I found out on the internet was that George actually was going down around the different Bojangles and rating the chicken tenders. And lo and behold, what I found out was that George, in 2010, was awarded a fried chicken from the Fried Chicken Connoisseur magazine as his rating system. He has a rating system, and this is the latest news in 2010. So this is one other aspect of George that we didn't know about, besides his scuba diving and everything like that. Now, so we did a little bit of further investigation, and we said, well, you know, maybe George has got a patent or something like that. So we actually found that George had a patent. And if you go to the U.S. Patent Department and you look up patent 0, comma 000, comma 000, you'll find out that George has invented what they call the Bose scale for rating chicken tenders. And he was honored in another magazine called Not So Famous Inventions of Not So Famous Americans. You guys didn't know that, did you? And all this is true. And the other thing that George did is, just to make sure that people would know he was a not-so-famous American, he developed a 381-page quiz that if you go to this magazine website and take this quiz, you can find out if you're a not-so-famous American. But I think the coup de grace of George was that George was kind of thrifty, you know. So we're sitting here thinking about George's thriftiness, and we found out that, golly, George was honored in Thrifty magazine. Thriftiest of the Thrifty Award from this magazine. And you can see what's in George's wallet, right? Absolutely nothing. Now to do this, George had to beat out 2 expert thriftiers in the Bojangles group. And just to make sure I can't really give you their names, I have to give you their initials. It's Al Reddick and Chellis Parrington. But the reason I'm laughing so much is because this next part is going to be really hard. Because I found out that George was an extravagant man. He valued his family and the time he invested with his family. I know, Virginia, he invested time with you and Vivian. This is the first time I met you. He invested time with you and Simon. I met Simon before, and also Noelle and husband David. He invested time with them. And how do I know that? Well, when you get kind of close to being in eternity, you put something close to you that really is meaningful. And on George's room in the hospice, there were 2 collages of pictures. One of them was from Simon, one that had all your pictures in it. And there was, on everybody's face, there was smile, there was laughter, and there was joy. And what George has given you all given to Noel and Vivian and Virginia and Simon and David, is inexpressible joy. He's passed his joy on to Noel's generation and on to the generation of his grandchildren. George, we're going to miss you. We love you, George, and thank you for the laughs and just for the friendship. I'm not going to take these home. I mean, you can verify them all. Anybody else want to share something?
I'm Craig, and George is one of my good buddies for about 38 years. And I really credit George for a lot of great things in my life, because when we first moved to Wood Valley, I'm in swimming laps right after lunch, trying to get some exercise. George comes over and taps me on the shoulder and says, "Did you know we have a 6:30 swim group?" And I said, "No." He says, "We'll be there tomorrow." So that was the start. And you know, George started that whole swim program at Wood Valley. I have been blessed with taking it over from George, and the pool's heated. It's 50 people, and this is all thanks to George. George and I did so much together. We spent a lot of time water skiing together. He's just a great friend, a great mentor, a very father figure to me, quite honestly. And Noel, God, I remember you from when you could barely walk, and going out on the boat, water skiing with Noel and George. So I wasn't part of the Bojangles group, and I wasn't part of the beer group. And that there is a huge beer group too, because George loved his beer. But I was part of the swim and the ski group, and the one thing is George made everybody feel like they were his best friend, and he valued everybody's worth and relationship. And I can't say enough great things about George. Again, a fantastic mentor. I really attribute a lot of the good things that I've done in my life because of George.
It seems like a natural segue for me to step in after Craig, because George and Craig were the first two neighbours I ever met in Wood Valley when we first came here in 1992. It was May of 92, early May, and we were riding around with a realtor who was showing us houses to rent, and just so happened one was in Wood Valley, but the realtor took us to the pool first, and fortunately, luckily, it happened to be clean-up day, and so I like to swim. I wasn't a regular lap swimmer at that time, but first two guys I met were George and Craig, and I expressed an interest in swimming, and a bit like Craig, next thing I knew, that Sunday morning I was swimming at 8, and at about 6:30, Craig, I remember 5:30 as well some mornings. So that was a great start to our Wood Valley experience, and we supposed to be here for 2 years on assignment with Glaxo. Well, like I say, that was 32 years ago, so I guess we kind of liked it. And George, the friendship with George was a big part of that. He was such one of the last great guys, really. And again, that meeting with George and Craig led to water skiing with them. Now, I could already water ski, but only on 2 skis, not slalom. So before I knew it, they had taught me to slalom, deep water starts, and they also helped to teach our 3 kids to ski as well. And now they're all good slalom skiers, thanks to George and Craig. So they've had both of them have had a big influence on our lives. Now, beer night has been mentioned once or twice, so on a slightly less healthy note, George did enjoy his beer, and it used to be Friday nights, but then Thursday became the new Friday, as some of you may be aware, so it became a regular Thursday night at Lone Rider was our go-to place when Lone Rider opened. When Gizmo opened, we used to alternate between the two. And anyway, safe to say that if for any reason beer night got cancelled, George was not a happy camper. So I'm not saying he drank to excess. We only ever had had 2 beers, so we were quite sensible. George was also a great Carolina Hurricanes fan, and I enjoyed going to the games with him and also with Rich, who's standing behind the camera back there. So that was a big part of his life as well. And I'm wearing an NC State shirt. I'm not actually an NC State grad, but my daughter was, so I feel I could wear it in honour of George, so I am. And I could have worn a Hurricanes jersey as well, but I thought that might be a bit too warm today. So, like I said, I'll always remember George as one of life's good guys, great sense of fun, but also a great and loyal friend who was ready to help. Any time you needed help, he would step in, no questions asked, to make things happen. Also, to mention Virginia. So, Virginia and my wife Barbara became great friends over the years through, starting off with me knowing George, and they used to, and I think still planning to, do some walking, and they did a lot of walking and a lot of talking, although I think that was mostly Virginia, but and remaining very close to this day. So finally, as I say, I'm not a state grad, but my daughter is, so I'm pleased to say, go State, go Canes, and go George.
So I want to tag in onto what David said earlier about not time, but I'll preface it with this, that George taught me to ski when he and Virginia were dating. It was very early on. I think it was before my 13th birthday in the summer at Lake Wheeler. But sometime later, fast forwarding, we were at Carr Lake and we were skiing, and it looked like a storm was coming up. And we pulled into a little cove, and George said, "Mike, tie up the boat." And I'm thinking, my knots, half hitch, bowline. This ought to be good. And so the winds are kicking up, and in a few minutes the boat is drifting away. And George just goes, no yelling, just goes, "Mike, the boat's drifting away." We were able to wade out there and grab it and bring it back, and I think somebody else tied it up. But George was just a great mentor, and we went on a lot of skiing trips. And I was, talk about being blessed, I was so blessed to, as a young kid, and especially going into middle school or junior high, as we said then, and trying to find your way and what are you good at and all those, and I really wasn't too good at ball sports, but I took to water skiing and I was very good, and he just was so generous with his time, and including me and our family in so many water ski trips. And the thing about it is that George, well, first of all, he was preeminently safe. If George was a pilot, you would want him to be the captain, right? Yes. And you would feel absolutely safe. That's how he was, and that's how he was on the water. And he said to me and Steve, my nephew, we were 2 months apart, and we went on a lot of these ski trips. He said, "If you guys are going to drive the boat, I want you to take a boating safety course." And so we did that, and we were all about it. And so George wanted us to be vested, and he was teaching us without us knowing it. He was teaching us that, you contribute to this thing that we're doing. You're part of the team, you're contributing, and then he allowed me to drive the boat and to drive the boat up on the trailer and all these things. And it was just a great, great experience, and I'll never forget him for it. Let's see, I think there was one other thing I wanted to say. I don't remember what it was. But so many good memories, and I miss him. Thank you.
I just want to say that my Shitty has been such a large figure in my life, and I feel like he's been an incredible mentor, and he's helped teach me so many things along the way, and I'm so grateful for that, because even when he was getting sick, he still managed to come to everything and still to help us and teach us, and even no matter what happened, he was just always there, and it was incredible. And I'm just so glad that he's been able to impact so many of you guys. It makes me so happy to know that he's done all of this. Thank you.
All right. Hey everybody, I'm Ashley Simons Rudolph. I am a good friend of Noel's, and probably known him maybe about the least of anybody here, just a mere maybe 30 years. So that makes me a newcomer, and I'll just share one story. So I have to say, being friends with Noel was being friends with, you're taken into the whole family. And when I go through times in my life, I lived overseas for a while, I was really sad. Noel would send me stories. She was like, let me tell you about this hilarious thing. She says, my dad said that he dropped his banana in his ThinkPad and ran outside after the cat. And she would always give me these like sort of play-by-play. And I'm like, this man is so hilarious. Like, he's so funny. But I'll never forget going over to Noel's house, and I grew up in a pretty strict family, and I went over, and they were relaxed. George and Virginia just relaxed in the house, and he's got a big stack of papers in front of him. Like, hey, what's going on, Mr. Simon? It was the Monica Lewinsky, the report from the, and I was. So I sat down. He was like, sit down for a minute. Yes, sir. I sit down, and he read me the first 30 pages of that report. And every, like having your friend's dad read it, I was, oh my, and then he was just, oh my goodness. And then he'd read some more, oh my goodness. And it went on. And it went on like this, and I was like, he's going to wear out pretty soon. Oh, he didn't wear out. I mean, he was indefatigable. I mean, this man will never, I just can't believe it, And it went on and on and on, and I just thought, I just looked at him. And I will always remember, so later in his life, I brought up to him, I was like, do you remember how you really, how you used to talk to me about politics? And do you remember doing that? And he was like, I did? And I said, yeah, you did. And he was like, well, that's good. You went on to get a PhD in policy, right? I was like, and I guess it all started with you reading this long report. So your family misses you tremendously, George. And I think we're just all really honored that we had a chance to get to know you in life. And so, anyway. I think that's what I want to say about George.
Thank you all. If anyone has anything else you want to share, just let us know. I have a microphone up here.
Actually, there was one thing I forgot to say, David. I mentioned the beer nights. What I forgot to mention was the majority of our group are Brits in the beer group, and so we made George an honorary Brit, and he seemed quite pleased about that. So, although, bearing in mind that earlier story about him having short arms and pockets and empty wallets, maybe we should have made him an honorary Scot. I hope there's nobody of Scottish heritage here who takes offence. But going back to the honorary Brit thing, I've actually got a pin here of a British flag and a North Carolina flag. So in George's honour, I'd like to present this to Virginia. So here you go, Virginia. Thank you.
This is a short story, which I don't know if Noel knows this, and I know David doesn't know this. But the day after George met David, right, we skied that morning. He was so excited. He came in, he says, I hope Noel marries this guy. He is like so perfect. And he's a keeper. He's a keeper, yeah. It was funny, and I like heard this whole story, and the big G just talked about David the entire time. And so you, my friend, were the consummate son-in-law. There is no way that Noel could have ever done better than you in the big joys of Jesus. So, and I, after getting to know you, agree with him 100%. You are a super person, and you know, there is so much about you that reminds me about George, and that is a compliment.
That might have been the morning after we spent about 2 hours stuck underneath the dryer together.
So it's the big D.
Hi.
You gotta turn the mic on.
Hi, I'm Virginia's cousin, her dad and my mom, brother and sister, Therese. I love Virginia, and her husband was wonderful. Didn't know him, just the times that we came to visit. But one time I came to visit, I don't know when it was, but we must have gotten to talking about Lebanese food, and I absolutely love Lebanese food. And I went back home, I don't remember, maybe in Michigan, I don't remember. He had his mom make a batch of mamul cookies. They're Lebanese, and they're filled with date, and they're special. Sent a box of them that his mother had made. And I don't know, I'm a baker, I like to cook, but that was just so special that he asked his mom to make them and then ship them out to me. Definitely a special family. He definitely fits in with the Urbans very well, with the kindness, the love, and the laughter. My husband couldn't come, but he says, the Urbans, I love to go visit, they all laugh. Now I know where you get your laugh from. I'd rather visit them than my family. Anyway.
I don't think I need to stand. Has everybody got the rest of their coffee so they can sit there and look at my face? Well, I want to thank Noelle and her family for letting me share today. as you can probably see that there's some of us here who are red, and we're part of George Simon's Bojangles gang. We've been meeting at the corner of Davis Drive and Highway 70 for 40 years, and the thought was that we made Bojangles what it is today. So, the other thing that's really interesting is when Noelle sent out her note or text, she called George Big G. I don't know whether you guys know, but I did not know George was called Big G. So what we decided to do was, we said, well, maybe George has different identities or something like that. So what I did is we went online to figure out what George had some other things he was doing. And we all know that you can trust everything you read online, right? And so just to verify that I did not find Russian disinformation, I went and told one of my buddies to go to some trusted news sources. So Rachel Maddow and Tucker Carlson have confirmed that the following stories are actually true. Now, George would come in, we'd go into Bojangles, and I don't remember if George was first or second in line, but he would always sit down and he would grade his chicken tenders. He would say whether they were soft, moist, whether they were hard, whether they're hot or whether they're cold, and thinking like, okay, he did this every week, and the big thing for George is that when they made a mistake and he gave 4 chicken tenders instead of 3, that just made his day. And what I found out on the internet was that George actually was going down around to different Bojangles and rating the chicken tenders. And lo and behold, what I found out was that George, in 2010, was awarded a fried chicken from the Fried Chicken Connoisseur magazine as his rating system. He has a rating system, and this is the latest news in 2010. So this is one other aspect of George that we didn't know about, besides his scuba diving and everything like that. Now, so we did a little bit of further investigation, and we said, well, you know, maybe George has got a patent or something like that. So we actually found that George had a patent. And if you go to the U.S. Patent Department and you look up patent 0, comma 000, comma 000, you'll find out that George has invented what they call the Bose scale for rating chicken tenders. And he was honored in another magazine called Not So Famous Inventions of Not So Famous Americans. You guys didn't know that, did you? And all this is true. And the other thing that George did is, just to make sure that people would know he was a not-so-famous American, he developed a 381-page quiz that if you go to this magazine website and take this quiz, you can find out if you're a not-so-famous American. But I think the coup de grace of George was that George was kind of thrifty, you know. So we're sitting here thinking about George's thriftiness, and we found out that, golly, George was honored in Thrifty magazine. He got the Thriftiest of the Thrifty Award from this magazine. And you can see what's in George's wallet, right? Absolutely nothing. Now, to do this, George had to beat out 2 expert thriftiers in the Bojangles group. And just to make sure I can't really give you their names, I have to give you their initials. It's Al Reddick and Chellis Parrington. But the reason I'm laughing so much is because this next part is going to be really hard. Because I found out that George was an extravagant man. He valued his family.
With him, you know, when I was young, but then, you know, again, as he was, you know, near the end in the past year, a couple of years, and he always wanted to just, you know, do his physical therapy and get well again and be there for his family, and, you know, taking the family out skiing, I know he's such a loss, but he had such a wonderful, wonderful zest for life during the time that we did have with him. And thank you all for helping share. This has been such a wonderful event so far. to see all of you and hear the aspects about George that I had never heard. I knew he had the beer and the Bojangles nights, but I didn't know much about what happened there.
You don't know half the story.
Oh, that's true. I'm sure. I probably don't even want to know. but I'm so glad. I don't even know how he had time to do all of these things with all of these different people from all walks of life. But I'm so glad that he did and that he was here. He had a great life. Thank you.
So I know I've already talked, but Miss Joanna reminded me of something I wanted to say. Just like he was always such a hard worker. Like, even in his last years, like he always worked hard, was always swimming, biking, skiing, doing all of his exercise and physical activities. And then in his last year, and like the year before that, just when everything started going downhill, he always did his physical therapy and whatever. He worked so hard to follow the instructions of like the different doctors, and he always worked so hard, and that really helped him a lot. And I feel like, just like his hard work really impacted our family. It's true.
Thank you guys all so very much.
Thanks for everybody.